The scent of roasting thyme and sage drifted through the open doorway, and it should have felt like coming home. It should have been warmth and laughter and the sleepy contentment of Thanksgiving afternoon. Instead, it was a knife sliding between my ribs. Slow, precise, fatal. My name is Claire Mitchell. I'm 68 years old, a retired social worker who spent 40 years helping families hold themselves together. And standing in my daughter's entryway that Thursday afternoon, I realized I had failed to save the one family that mattered most. Mine. I stood at the threshold between the polished hardwood foyer and the dining room, my arms aching under the weight of 2 canvas tote bags. In one, 2 homemade pumpkin pies with crusts I'd crimped by hand at 4 a.m, each ridge pressed with my thumb the way my own mother had taught me. In the other, a bottle of Cabernet that cost more than my electric bill, a 2015 vintage I'd been saving for a year, waiting for exactly this moment. My first Thanksgiving at Olivia's new house. My first invitation in 18 months. What I didn't know as I stood there breathing in the smell of someone else's family dinner was that everything I thought I knew about my life was a carefully constructed lie. By the time I walked out that door 2 hours later, I would have dismantled my daughter's entire existence with 6 taps on my phone screen. The woman I trusted most in the world would become a stranger. The future I'd sacrificed. Everything to build would shatter like crystal on concrete. And the person I would become? I didn't recognize her yet, but she was about to save my life. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about how YouTube works. The algorithm decides who gets to see the ending of this story based on one thing: engagement. If you're not subscribed, if you don't leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, YouTube assumes you're not interested and stops showing you the content. I've seen people spend hours searching for part 2 of stories they never got to finish. Don't let that be you. Subscribe right now. Comment your city below, because what happens in the next 48 hours, you won't believe it even when I tell you. And I need you to see it all the way through. So let me take you back to where it started. To the moment I should have seen the truth, but chose to look away instead. The text message had arrived 3 days earlier, at 11:47 on a Monday night. I remember the time because I'd been lying in bed, unable to sleep, scrolling through photos of Olivia's daughters on social media, the only way I got to see my granddaughters anymore. My phone had lit up the dark bedroom, and for one foolish moment, my heart had leapt with hope. Mom. Come over on the 28th at 1 p.m. Family dinner. No, hi. No, I miss you. No, we'd love to see you. Just a command, sterile and cold as a doctor's office reminder. I had stared at those words for 20 minutes, analyzing them the way I used to analyze court documents when I testified in custody cases. What did family dinner mean? Who would be there? Why now, after all this silence? I had typed and deleted 5 different responses. Finally, I sent a single red heart emoji, a pathetic, desperate bid for warmth. She never replied, but it didn't matter. I was going. Of course I was going. She was my daughter. They were my grandbabies. And I was still fool enough to believe that blood meant something. I had spent 3 days preparing. I made the pies from scratch, using organic pumpkins I'd roasted myself, the filling spiced exactly the way Olivia used to love when she was small. I bought the wine from a specialty shop in Portland, spending money I shouldn't have spent. I even bought a new blouse, soft gray cashmere that made me look less tired, less old, less like the woman whose phone calls went unanswered for weeks at a time. I had driven to her house in Seattle's Madison Park neighborhood, a sprawling 2-story colonial with white columns and a perfect lawn that probably required a full-time gardener. The house I had never been invited to see until today. The house I didn't know existed until I looked up her address on my phone. I had rung the doorbell at exactly 1 o'clock, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My son-in-law Nathan had opened the door, a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, his tie loosened around his neck. His smile was architectural, engineered to hold up his face, but never reaching his eyes, never carrying actual warmth. He'd leaned in and given me a kiss on the cheek so brief and papery, it barely disturbed the air between us. "Claire, right on time. Come on in." I had stepped inside, and the smell of the turkey had wrapped around me like a memory. The dining room was visible from the entryway, a long mahogany table set beneath a brass chandelier that scattered light across crystal stemware and cream-colored linen napkins folded into intricate fans. It was magazine perfect, staged like a lifestyle blog post, beautiful in that cold, untouchable way that made you afraid to breathe too hard. And then I had seen them, 6 chairs, all of them occupied. Olivia sat at the head of the table, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, wearing a silk blouse I didn't recognize and pearls I'd never seen. She looked expensive. She looked happy. She looked like a stranger. Nathan had returned to his seat at the opposite end, flanking her like a bookend. Between them, arranged with careful symmetry, were Nathan's parents. His father Gerald, a broad-shouldered man with silver hair and a voice that filled rooms, was already carving the turkey with confident, practiced strokes. His mother Patricia sat beside him, her hair dyed a dramatic auburn and sprayed into rigid perfection, wearing a shimmering emerald blouse and lipstick the color of fresh blood. They had glanced up when I entered, offering me brief, polite smiles, the kind you give a waiter or a delivery person, before turning back to their conversation. And then I saw them, my granddaughters. Emma, 8 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and a velvet headband holding back her curls. Grace, 6, in a navy dress with white buttons that I had bought for her last summer, before everything changed. They smiled when they saw me. Grace raised her small hand to wave, and the gesture was so full of innocent joy that I nearly dropped the bags I was holding. "Grace, sit still," Olivia said sharply, not looking at her daughter. "We're about to say grace." The unintentional irony might have been funny in another life. In this one, it just hurt. I remained standing in the doorway, a ghost at a feast I wasn't invited to. The bags were pulling at my shoulders, the weight of them somehow increasing with every second I stood there. My coat was still buttoned. My purse was still on my shoulder. No one stood up. No one moved to get another chair. No one even looked at me with anything resembling recognition. Finally, Olivia glanced up. Her smile was tight and painful, like a wound held closed with insufficient stitches. "Mom, so glad you could make it." Her voice was high and false, performed for an audience. I nodded, my throat too thick to speak. "I brought the pumpkin pies," I managed. "And the wine you like." "Thanks." She was already looking away, back toward the platter of food. "Just leave everything in the kitchen." My legs felt disconnected from my body as I walked toward the kitchen. The room was massive and sterile, white marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, pendant lights hanging over an island the size of my bed. It was beautiful and cold as a surgical suite. I set the bags down carefully, my hands trembling, and stood there for a moment, staring at the Viking stove, at the wine rack built into the wall, at the evidence of a life I didn't recognize. I took a breath that hurt going down and returned to the dining room. They had already started. Nathan was spooning mashed potatoes onto Patricia's plate, the serving spoon creating perfect round scoops. Gerald was laughing at something his wife had said, his voice booming across the table. The girls were fidgeting with their napkins, and Emma was whispering something to Grace that made her giggle. The entire scene continued as if I weren't there, as if I had never been there, as if I had never existed at all. I approached slowly, my voice emerging small and raw from somewhere deep in my chest. "Olivia? Honey? Where should I sit?" She looked up. Our eyes met, And in that single moment, I saw it. Not confusion, not forgetfulness, not surprise. I saw a decision, cold, calculated, already made. "Oh, Mom." Her voice dropped into a tone of false sweetness, cloying as artificial sugar. We organized the table differently this year." I blinked. The room was silent except for the quiet clink of silverware against porcelain. "There are 6 chairs," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "There are 6 of you." She sighed, a theatrical exhalation of exasperation, and set down her serving spoon. She wiped her hands on her napkin with precise, delicate movements, and looked directly into my eyes. The warmth I remembered from her childhood, the way she used to climb into my lap when she had bad dreams, the way she used to hold my hand crossing streets, was gone. In its place was a polished, impenetrable surface I couldn't penetrate. "Mom, don't take it personally." Her tone was reasonable, patient, the voice you'd use with a confused elderly person at a grocery store. "It's just that this year we wanted it to be more intimate. Just the people who really matter, you know? Priorities." The word hit me like a physical blow. Priorities. She said it so easily, as if she were discussing her grocery list or her Netflix queue, as if my name had never been written on whatever invisible roster she kept in her head. As if I were an obligation to be managed, an errand to be postponed indefinitely. Nathan placed a plate piled high with turkey and stuffing in front of Patricia. She smiled and covered his hand with hers, her crimson nails stark against his skin. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's absolutely perfect." The girls had started eating. Gerald raised his tumbler of whiskey toward the table. "To family," he boomed, his voice filling every corner of the room. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except me. Because I didn't have a glass. Because I didn't have a chair. Because I didn't have a place. I stood there, coat still buttoned, hands empty, heart fracturing into pieces so small and sharp, I didn't know how I would ever gather them up again. Olivia looked at me one more time, and this time I saw something else in her eyes. Discomfort. Not guilt. Not remorse. Just the vague social awkwardness of someone who has to deal with an unexpected inconvenience. "Mom, if you want, you can wait in the living room for a bit. We can talk after dinner." After dinner. As if I were a package that needed signing for. As if my presence were a task to be completed, filed away, forgotten. I looked at my granddaughters. Emma was chewing her food with focused concentration, her eyes fixed on her plate. Grace was pushing a single green bean around with her fork, making patterns in her mashed potatoes. Neither of them looked at me. Neither of them asked why Grandma was standing, in the doorway, instead of sitting at the table. Patricia raised her glass toward Olivia, her voice warm and genuine. "Darling, this is all just magnificent. Thank you so much for having us. It's been so long since I felt like I was truly part of a family." Olivia beamed. The smile that spread across her face was radiant, genuine, full of a joy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Maybe longer. "It's our pleasure, Patricia. You are our priority." There was that word again. Priority. I swallowed, against the knot in my throat, so tight it felt like hands around my neck. I felt the hot sting of tears building behind my eyes, but I would not cry. Not there. Not in front of them. Not in front of the woman who sat in my place, eating food paid for with my money, in a house that existed because of my bank account. I took one step back, then another. No one turned. No one asked where I was going. I walked to the entryway and picked up my purse from where I'd set it on the marble floor. I took out my phone. And standing there in the hallway of my daughter's house, surrounded by the smell of her priority dinner and the sound of her priority family's laughter. I made the most important decision of my life. My hands were shaking, but my fingers were precise. I opened my banking app, the one I checked obsessively every morning, making sure there was enough money to cover all my obligations. I found the automatic transfer, the one that sent $1,500 to Olivia's account on the T1 first of every month. The one that had been running for 3 years without interruption. I pressed cancel. A small confirmation appeared. Recurring transfer canceled successfully. Then I found the credit card. The supplementary card in Olivia's name, an extension of my own account, the one she used for groceries and gas and emergencies and apparently designer blouses and expensive haircuts. I pressed cancel. Card successfully deactivated. Then I called my bank's automated line, my voice, steady as I navigated the menu options. I would like to terminate the lease agreement for the property at 847 Lakeview Drive, Madison Park, Seattle, Unit 3. Are you sure you want to cancel this agreement? The automated voice asked. Yes, I said, completely sure. Your cancellation will be processed within 24 hours. I hung up. I took the first breath that seemed to reach my lungs in months. I glanced back toward the dining room one last time. They were still eating, still laughing, still existing in their perfect bubble of priority people. They hadn't noticed my absence. They probably wouldn't notice for hours, maybe days. I opened the front door, stepped out into the November cold, and closed it softly behind me. No drama, no shouting, no begging. I was not going to humiliate myself by asking them to see me, because if I wasn't a priority for them, they would no longer be a priority for me. I walked down the pristine sidewalk of Madison Park, past houses strung with Christmas lights, past windows glowing with the warm amber light of families gathered together. The late afternoon air was sharp and clean, biting at my cheeks, cutting through my cashmere blouse. I walked 6 blocks before I realized I was shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline and grief, and the terrifying, exhilarating clarity of what I had just done. I sat down on a frost-covered bench in a small park overlooking Lake Washington. Holiday lights twinkled in the bare branches of trees. A young couple walked past holding hands, their laughter hanging in the cold air like visible breath. I watched them disappear around a corner, and then I took out my phone again. I looked at the canceled transfer. $1,500. Every month. For 3 years. That was $54,000. And that didn't include the credit card, which I knew from the monthly statements often ran over $1,000. And the apartment, the $2,500 monthly rent I had been paying directly to the landlord for 2 years, another $60,000. I closed my eyes and did the math. Over the past 8 years, since Olivia had married Nathan, I had given them over $160,000. Olivia didn't know that. She thought Nathan was a financial wizard. She thought his modest salary as an insurance adjuster somehow magically covered their upscale lifestyle. She thought her perfect life just worked, like magic, like something she deserved simply by existing. Sitting on that bench, the memories came flooding back with brutal clarity. It had started 8 years ago. Olivia had just turned 32. I was 60. She came to my small paid-off house in Portland one Sunday afternoon with Nathan trailing behind her. He was quiet and polite, with a weak handshake and eyes that never quite met mine. But Olivia was glowing in a way I hadn't seen since before her divorce from her first husband. A bitter, ugly separation that had left her hollow. And angry for 3 years. "Mom, we're getting married," she'd announced, her hand clutching Nathan's. I had hugged her, tears of genuine joy streaming down my face. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. All I want is for you to be happy." "I am, Mom. Nathan is different. He takes care of me." The wedding had been simple but expensive. I paid for her dress, a beautiful ivory silk gown with delicate lace sleeves. I paid for the deposit on the reception venue, a boutique hotel overlooking the Columbia River. I paid for the catering, the flowers, the photographer. Olivia had asked with a voice full of rehearsed embarrassment, "Mom, Nathan is saving for our down payment. We just don't want to go into debt for one day." I hadn't hesitated. "Don't you worry about a thing, sweetheart. I'll take care of it." I spent $22,000 on that wedding. She thanked me with a quick kiss on the cheek. Nathan thanked me with a forced smile and another weak handshake. 6 months later, Emma was born. Olivia stopped working. She'd been a receptionist at a dental office, a job she'd hated. Nathan's income, I now understood with devastating clarity, was barely enough to cover rent on their tiny 2-bedroom apartment in a questionable neighborhood. I visited every week, bringing diapers and groceries and clothes for the baby. Olivia always accepted everything with a tired smile. "Thanks, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." One evening I arrived to find her sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by a sea of envelopes, bills, all of them overdue. Emma was asleep in her crib. Olivia looked up at me with eyes so red and swollen I barely recognized her. "We can't make it, Mom," she sobbed, holding up an electric bill marked Final Notice. "We can't make it to the end of the month." I sat down on the floor beside her, my knees protesting, my heart breaking. "How much do you need?" "I can't ask you for more. You've already done so much." I took her hand. "Tell me how much." $1,000. Just for this month. I'll pay you back. I promise." I wrote her a check for $1,500. "Don't pay me back. Just use it for Emma." She hugged me, crying into my shoulder. "You're the best mom in the world." But that month turned into 2 months, then 6, then a year. Every time I gently asked if they were getting back on their feet, Olivia had a new reason. Emma was sick. Nathan lost a commission. The rent increased. And I always said yes. She was my daughter. Emma was my granddaughter. I wanted them to be safe. When Grace was born 2 years later, things got worse. Nathan was passed over for a promotion. Olivia couldn't imagine going back to work. Who would watch the girls, Mom? Daycare costs more than I'd earn, just until Grace starts preschool. I swear we won't need help after that. The help never stopped. I kept sending the money. But it wasn't just the $1,500 anymore. It was Christmas presents and birthday gifts and new winter coats, and ballet lessons and car repairs. I paid for all of it. And Olivia always thanked me. Always said it was temporary. Always promised things would change soon. 2 years ago, she had called me, breathless with excitement. "Mom, we found the most amazing apartment. It's in Madison Park. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, a community pool, walking distance to the best elementary school in Seattle. It's perfect for the girls." I had smiled, my own bank account dwindling, but my heart full. "That's wonderful, honey. Is Nathan's income enough for it?" There was a long pause. The kind of pause that speaks louder than words. "The rent is $2,500 a month. Nathan makes about $3,200. We'd only have $700 left for everything else. Food, utilities, gas, insurance, clothes. We can't make it work." I understood what she was asking without her having to say it. "How much do you need?" If you could just cover the rent. Just for a little while. Just until Nathan gets his next raise. We could use his whole paycheck for living expenses, and we'd be so comfortable. And I swear, Mom, the second his raise comes through, we'll pay you back every penny." I had agreed. I called the landlord myself. I signed the lease in my name because Olivia and Nathan's credit wasn't good enough. Just a formality, I told myself, just to help them get approved. I paid the security deposit. I paid the first month's rent, and the second, and the third. And so it continued, month after month, year after year. Olivia never mentioned paying me back. Nathan never got that raise, and I never said anything. Because I thought this was what love looked like. I thought this was what mothers did. But something had started to change about a year ago. The phone calls became less frequent. What used to be daily conversations dwindled to weekly, then every other week, then nothing unless I initiated contact. When I did call, Olivia was always busy. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back." She never called back. I had tried visiting unannounced the way I used to. The first time I showed up at the Madison Park apartment, Olivia greeted me at the door with a look of pure annoyance. "Mom, you really should call first. The house is a disaster." I looked past her into the immaculate living room, the one with furniture I'd helped pay for, and saw no disaster. Just discomfort at my presence. "I just wanted to see the girls," I said, my arms full of groceries I'd bought for them. "Next time, let me know ahead of time, okay?" The visits became increasingly uncomfortable. I would sit on her plush sectional sofa while she bustled around, wiping already clean counters, checking her phone, sighing with theatrical exhaustion. The girls would be in their rooms. Nathan would come home from work, offer a tired, "Hey, Claire," and disappear into his study. I would stay for exactly 1 hour, feeling more like an intruder with every passing minute, and then I would leave. One day, I was sitting in the living room waiting for Olivia to finish a phone call in the kitchen. She didn't know I could hear her. "Yeah, Patricia. I know," she was saying, her voice light and conspiratorial. "My mom is just... she's a lot, you know. She always shows up unannounced. She just doesn't get that we have our own life now. She's so needy." A hollow space opened in my chest. Patricia. Nathan's mother. She was complaining about me to her. Mother-in-law. I got up quietly, gathered my purse, and left without saying goodbye. Olivia didn't even notice I was gone. From that day forward, I waited. I waited for her to call. I waited for her to notice my absence. I waited for her to ask how I was doing, whether I was okay, whether I needed anything. 3 weeks passed. Nothing. Until the text message. Cold. Clinical. Mandatory. "Mom, come over on the 28th at 1 p.m. Family dinner." And I had gone, my heart full of desperate, foolish hope, thinking maybe this was the reconciliation. Maybe they missed me. Maybe I had been wrong about everything. But all I found was my place occupied by a woman with better hair. My role as mother given to someone whose son earned enough money that she didn't have to sacrifice everything to keep him afloat. I opened my eyes. The park was nearly dark now, the lights reflecting off the still surface of the lake. The cold had seeped into my bones, but something inside me was burning. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw everything exactly as it was. I got up from the bench and walked to the bus stop. As I waited, watching the headlights of cars streaming past, I knew there was no going back. Olivia was about to discover very soon that her perfect life was a performance funded entirely by the woman she had just erased. And when it all came crashing down, I would not be there to catch her. I arrived at my small one-bedroom apartment in Portland as the last light disappeared from the sky. I turned on the lamp in my living room, and the silence that usually felt like loneliness felt different tonight. It felt like peace, a bitter, jagged peace, but peace nonetheless. I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker on across the river. I had 3 missed calls and 2 text messages. None were from Olivia. One message was from my bank, confirming the cancellations. Another was from an unknown Seattle number. I opened it. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Catherine Ross. You probably don't remember me, but I was your neighbor 10 years ago at the Riverside Apartments on Johnson Street. I got your number from the building manager. I need to talk to you. It's important. Please call me. Catherine. Of course I remembered her. A young attorney, freshly divorced with a baby daughter named Zoe. I had watched Zoe for her when she had late court hearings. I'd brought her meals when she was too exhausted to cook. I'd never asked for anything in return. That was just who I was. Always helping, always giving. I dialed the number. She answered on the second ring. Mrs. Mitchell? Yes, Catherine, I got your message. Oh, Mrs. Mitchell, it's so good to hear your voice. I've been trying to find you for months. I moved back to Seattle last year, and I never forgot what you did for me during the worst time of my life. You were an angel. I smiled, a sad, thin smile. It was nothing, Catherine. It was everything. And now I want to repay you. I'm a partner at my own firm now, family and estate law. If you ever need legal help with anything, I'm at your service. No charge. It's the least I can do. I was quiet for a moment. The timing felt like fate, like the universe was aligning. Thank you, Catherine. I'll keep that in mind. Is everything okay, Mrs. Mitchell? You sound different. I looked out the window at the dark river. Everything is changing, Catherine. Well, I'm here. I'm texting you my information right now. Call me for anything. We hung up. Her message arrived instantly. Catherine Ross, partner, Ross & Chen Family Law. I saved the contact, a strange feeling settling over me. I didn't know if I would need her help, but something told me this was far from over. Monday morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was reclaiming my own dignity. I called Catherine. I need your help. Now. I went to her office that afternoon. It was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel and modern art. Catherine was no longer the frightened young woman I'd known. She was a force, sharp blazer, confident handshake, eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Mitchell, come in. Tell me everything. And I did. I told her about Olivia and Nathan and Patricia. I told her about the years of money, the apartment lease in my name, the credit cards, the constant requests. I told her about Thanksgiving, about the 6 chairs, about the word priorities. She listened without interruption, her expression growing harder with every detail. When I finished, she looked at the documents I'd brought, the lease agreement, the credit card statements, the bank transfer records. Mrs. Mitchell, she said, her voice firm and clear. You have every legal right to do what you did. The lease is in your name. The cards are yours. The transfers were voluntary gifts, not legal obligations. But you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. I know, I said. I want to cancel the lease. Officially. Legally. I want them to know I'm no longer responsible. Catherine's eyes flashed. I'll handle it. I'll draft a formal lease termination notice today and send it to the landlord. 30 days notice, as required by Washington state law. I'll also send a certified letter to your daughter and son-in-law at that address, informing them that the lease will not be renewed by you and that they'll need to vacate or sign a new lease with the landlord directly. They can't afford it, I said quietly. That, Catherine said gently, is no longer your legal problem. It's theirs. The next few days were silent. I expected a call, a text, something. Nothing came. On Friday morning, I received a message from Olivia. Mom, something's wrong with my card. Can you check it? It's not working. I read the message. I didn't reply. 2 hours later. Mom, this is serious. I tried to buy groceries and it was declined. It says the card is invalid. What's going on? I didn't reply. That evening she called. I let it ring. She called 4 more times, then a voicemail, her voice tight with barely contained panic. Mom, what is going on? The bank said the card was canceled. Did you know about this? Call me. Now. I deleted the message. The following Monday, Catherine called. Mrs. Mitchell, the landlord received the termination notice. He's informed me that he sent formal notification to the tenants, your daughter, that the lease is terminated as of December 31st. They have 30 days to vacate or negotiate a new lease at the current market rate. The same day, my phone rang. It was Olivia. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Mom! Her voice was shrill, razor-edged with panic. What did you do? What the hell did you do? I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia. The landlord. We got a letter. He said the lease is terminated. He said you canceled it. Why would you do this to us? We're going to be homeless. The girls, you're going to make your granddaughters homeless. You're an adult, Olivia. You're married. You can sign your own lease. We can't afford it. You know we can't. The rent is $2,500. How could you do this to us? I took a breath. Let me ask you a question, Olivia. The credit card I canceled, the apartment I'm no longer paying for. Did you think that money grew on trees? Did you ever, even once, stop to think about where it was coming from? Stunned silence. What are you talking about? The credit card was one I paid the bill for every month. The $1,500 you received on the first of every month. Did you think that was Nathan's commission? Did you think it was magic? More silence. And the apartment, Olivia, the beautiful 3-bedroom apartment in Madison Park that you've lived in for 2 years, I signed that lease. I've paid every single dollar of that rent for 2 years. The silence on the other end was so complete I thought she'd hung up. Then I heard a small, choked sound. No, that's not true. Nathan said. Nathan's salary paid for your car insurance and your groceries, Olivia. Barely. I paid for everything else, for 8 years. I have paid for your entire life. And on Thanksgiving, you told me I wasn't a priority. You told me I wasn't one of the people who really matter. So I decided to agree with you. I'm taking my money, my time, and my priorities back. You... Her voice was strangled, drowning in rage and dawning horror. You're a monster. You're selfish. You always wanted to control me. That's why Dad left you. Because you're unbearable. No one can stand to be around you. The old insult. The one she'd been using since she was a teenager. It used to hurt. Now it was just pathetic. The desperate flailing of a cornered animal. I have nothing more to say to you, Olivia. You have 30 days. I suggest you call Patricia. I'm sure she'd be happy to help her priority family. I hung up. I sat down on my sofa, and the tears I had refused to cry in her house finally came. Not tears of regret, tears of liberation. A week later, I was served with legal papers. Olivia was suing me for family abandonment, claiming she was financially dependent on me and that my sudden withdrawal of support constituted a breach of familial duty, causing extreme emotional distress and financial hardship. I took the papers to Catherine. She read them and laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was bitter and incredulous. This is absurd. She's an adult. She has a husband. This will be thrown out. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I walked into the sterile courtroom and saw Olivia across the aisle. She was pale and thin, her hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, her eyes blazing with hatred so pure it was almost tangible. Nathan sat beside her, looking defeated and small. Patricia was nowhere to be seen. Olivia's attorney, a young man barely out of law school, argued that I had created a pattern of dependency, that I had a moral and ethical obligation to continue my support, that my sudden withdrawal was cruel and vindictive. Then Catherine stood up. She didn't argue emotion. She presented facts. "Your Honor," she said, her voice calm and precise. "My client, Mrs. Claire Mitchell, is a 68-year-old retired social worker living on a fixed income. For 8 years, she has voluntarily supported her adult daughter, son-in-law, and their 2 children. She placed a thick binder on the bench. Here is the $22,000 Mrs. Mitchell spent on her daughter's wedding. Another binder. Here are the monthly bank transfers totaling $54,000 over 3 years. Another. Here are the credit card statements showing an additional $33,000 in charges. A final, massive binder. And here is the lease agreement and proof of payment for her daughter's apartment. $2,500 per month for 2 years. An additional $60,000. In total, Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell has given her daughter over $169,000. The judge, an older man with silver hair and tired, perceptive eyes, looked at the mountain of evidence, then at Olivia. "Ma'am, do you work?" "No, sir. I stay home with my children." "Does your husband work?" "Yes, sir." The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Mitchell, why did you stop this financial support?" I stood, my voice shaking but clear. "Your Honor, on Thanksgiving, I brought homemade pies to my daughter's home. When I arrived, she and her husband and his parents were seated at a table set for 6. There was no chair for me. My daughter told me to wait in the living room until after dinner because this year she was only celebrating with the people who really matter. She said I wasn't a priority. I simply decided to accept her assessment." The judge was silent for a long moment. He closed his notebook with a decisive snap. "I've, heard enough. Lawsuit dismissed. In fact, I find this suit so frivolous and frankly offensive that I'm ordering the plaintiff to pay the defendant's legal fees within 60 days. Olivia made a sound like a wounded animal. It was over. As we left the courthouse, Catherine squeezed my shoulder. "They'll appeal. They'll fight this." "Let them," I said. "I'm done fighting for people who don't want me." 3 months later, the call came. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Mitchell? This is Roosevelt Elementary School in Seattle. We have you listed as an emergency contact for Emma Hartley." My heart stopped. "Is she okay? What's wrong?" "She's physically fine, but we had an incident today. Emma had a severe panic attack during class. She's in the nurse's office. She's asking for you. We've tried to contact her mother, but the phone number we have is disconnected." I was in my car in 3 minutes. I made the drive from Portland to Seattle in record time, my heart pounding the entire way. I ran into the school, into the nurse's office, and there was my Emma, my beautiful, sweet Emma, huddled on a small cot, her face red and swollen and streaked with tears. When she saw me, she launched herself into my arms. "Grandma, Grandma, you came." I held her, my heart shattering and healing at the same time. "Of course I came, sweetheart. I'm here. I'm always here." "I miss you so much, Grandma." She sobbed into my shoulder. "We live at Grandma Patricia's house now. It's really small. Grace and I have to share a room. Mom cries all the time. She got a job, but she's always tired and angry. She and Dad fight every night. And Mom said," her voice broke, "Mom said we can never see you again because you're a bad person." "Oh, Emma," I whispered, stroking her hair. She pulled back and looked at me with desperate, serious eyes. "But you're not bad, Grandma. You're the one who always made the pumpkin pies. You're the one who remembered that Grace likes the crusts cut off her sandwiches. You're the one who taught me how to braid hair. You're good, Grandma." The principal and I spoke for nearly an hour. Olivia had lost the apartment. Nathan's parents had taken them in, but the living situation was volatile and crowded. Olivia was working as a cashier at a Target. Nathan was working 2 jobs. The perfect life had collapsed completely. I called Catherine that night. "I need to see my granddaughters." "We can file for grandparent visitation rights," she said. Given the documented instability of the home environment and Emma's anxiety, the court will likely grant it. It was another legal battle. This time, Olivia fought me with everything she had. She called me a monster, a manipulator, a vindictive, cruel old woman who wanted to destroy her family. But the judge, the same one from the first case, reviewed the school reports. He reviewed the therapy notes documenting Emma's nightmares. He reviewed the drawings both girls had made in therapy sessions. All of them, featuring a sad little girl and a conspicuously absent grandmother. He granted me visitation, 2 weekends a month. The first time I picked them up, they ran to me like I was the only solid thing in their tilting world. We went back to my little apartment. We made cookies. We watched movies. We read stories. We didn't talk about Olivia. We just existed together, safe and whole. Months passed. The visits became routine, a new, fragile normal. I learned through the girls that Olivia and Nathan had finally moved into their own small apartment in a less expensive neighborhood. That Olivia was still working. That things were still hard, but stabilizing. One evening, as I was tucking Grace into the pull-out sofa bed in my living room, she looked up at me with her enormous dark eyes. "Grandma, why don't you and Mommy talk anymore?" I sat on the edge of the bed, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes, sweetheart, grown-ups hurt each other in ways that are hard to fix. Your mom and I, we hurt each other very much." "Do you still love her?" I looked at her small, perfect face. "I will always love your mom. She's my daughter. But I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean you have to let them hurt you." She nodded, as if that made perfect sense, and closed her eyes. It's been a year now since that Thanksgiving. A year since the 6 chairs and the word priorities. I see Emma and Grace every other weekend. They are my joy. They are my light. I have never spoken to Olivia again. She drops the girls off at the curb of my apartment building, and I wait on the front steps. We exchange a brief glance. Her eyes are no longer filled with hatred. They're just empty, exhausted. Whether our relationship will ever be repaired, I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe some things are meant to break so that new things can grow in their place. I had to let my daughter's life collapse to save my own. I had to lose her to find myself. Last week, I was baking a pumpkin pie. Just for me, and the girls. Emma was helping me crimp the crust, her small fingers careful and precise. "Grandma, your house always smells so good," she said. I smiled and kissed the top of her head. "It's the smell of priorities, sweetheart. My priorities." I had lost my place at her table, but I had finally, after 68 years, built my own. And at this table, I had a permanent, undeniable, non-negotiable seat. I was no longer invisible. I was Claire Mitchell. And for the first time in my life, I was